Today we are on Saxon Math Book 3, Lesson 51, and we're going to talk about rectangles. So I don't expect this to be terribly new for many of you or any of you at all, but a rectangle is one of many shapes you've been studying, and so the question is, what makes something a rectangle? What needs to be true about the shape in order for it to be a rectangle? So let's take a look at a couple of these things. This right here is a rectangle. This one is not a rectangle. So what differences do you see between those two shapes? They both have four sides. In order to be a rectangle, your shape must have four sides. So that's one thing that's true about a rectangle. However, this one has four sides as well, and it is not a rectangle. So what else do you notice that's special about the rectangle? Hopefully you said, that one has square corners. If you take a look at the shape here that is a rectangle, you see that you can make a little tiny square box out of each corner. It's called a 90-degree angle. It's a perpendicular angle. It makes a square corner. And the new word that we're going to talk about today is it's called a right angle. So it's been a while since I've had my third graders put anything in their math dictionaries, but this is the next day for math dictionaries. You want to write down that a right angle is the same thing as a square corner. You're going to start seeing these words right angle in your textbook and on your tests. And what that means is square corner, or we could also add perpendicular sides. Okay? All right, so I have some other examples up here on the board, and we're going to talk about, is it a square or isn't it a square? So let's start. I said the wrong thing. Is it a rectangle or isn't it a rectangle? I apologize. We're talking about rectangles today, not squares. So this first one, however, it is a square. Maybe that's why I got my words mixed up. It is a square, but the question is it a rectangle? Well, what does it take for something to be a rectangle? It has to have four sides. Does this have four sides? Yes, it sure does. And it has to have square corners. Now let me specify here. It has to have four square corners. One square corner won't cut it. It has to have all four corners, right angles, square corners. Okay? So this one, if you take a look at it, four sides and 1, 2, 3, 4 square corners. Is it a rectangle? Yes, it definitely is. But I thought it was a square. Yes, it definitely is. So here's the trick. Every square is a rectangle. Every rectangle is not a square. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth. Squares have even more specific rules than rectangles. So we talk about those later in the book. Today we only focus on rectangles, and in order to be a rectangle, it has four sides. Are there any squares that don't have four sides? Nope, there aren't. In order to be a rectangle, it has to have four right angles. Are there any squares that don't have four right angles? Nope, that doesn't exist either. So every square in the whole entire world also could be called a rectangle. Every square is a rectangle. The flip side of that statement is every rectangle is not necessarily a square. So I'm going to add this about squares, and then we can discuss that statement. In order to be a square, it has to have four sides, four right angles, and all four sides have to be the same length. We call that congruent. In a rectangle, do all four sides have to be the same length? No. So that is why we could have a rectangle like this one right here, which is not a square. So it can be a little bit confusing. You are going to see problems that talk about that throughout the book in your written practice. So just keep in mind what makes something a rectangle. Four sides, four right angles. Okay? So rectangle, yes, this one is. We'll put a big check mark in it. That is a rectangle. What about this one? Is this a rectangle? It has 1, 2, 3, 4 sides. It has square corners. Well, not that one, but these two are square corners. But in order to be a rectangle, it has to have 4 square corners. This one is not a rectangle. What about this one? It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. Not a rectangle. And what about this one? I count, this is a rectangle right here, this front side. And in fact, I would bet, because this looks like a rectangular prism to me, like maybe my tissue box, I can see it has rectangular sides. They're all rectangles, but is this a rectangle? No, this is a three-dimensional shape. We call it a rectangular prism, but by itself, it is not a rectangle. Okay, your activity for today is to look around your house and find as many rectangles as you can see at home. Try to find at least 5 and then tell them to me tomorrow when we meet together for math. Try to find 5 rectangles around your house and tell me what they are, what you found that was rectangular. After that, you can begin your written practice, which starts on page 279 of your textbook. Have a great day. I'll see you soon.